Of Christmases Long, Long Ago is my new book arriving for the 2025 Christmas season. Find out what Christmas was like centuries ago. Sneak preview, it was weird and spooky and rowdy, kind of gross sometimes. Find it wherever books are sold in hardcover from Lions Press and audiobook from Recorded Books. It's Christmas as you've never seen it before, and it makes a great gift. Welcome back to another installment of Christmas in Quarantine. It's Christmas Past's impromptu miniseries of indeterminate length. Join me for daily episodes until things start looking better on the COVID-19 crisis. And speaking of which, I do hope that you're staying safe and healthy, that you're practicing all of the common sense guidelines, and that you're treating the situation with the seriousness it deserves and taking your advice only from trained medical professionals. Now, during our time at home, a lot of us are watching more TV and movies. And for those of us with the Christmas spirit, it's only a matter of time before we start digging through YouTube and seeing what nostalgic treasures are there for the taking. Anyone who grew up in the 80s will be familiar with a toy known as the Wacky Wall Walkers. They were kind of a fad toy that you'd often find in toy stores or sometimes even as prizes in cereal boxes. They were sticky, and when you threw them against the wall, they would appear to crawl down. Well, in the 80s it was also true that anything that was marginally popular would also have its own line of merchandise, maybe its own breakfast cereal, and sooner or later a Saturday morning cartoon or a cartoon special. That happens to be the case with the Wacky Wall Walkers, believe it or not. They had their own Christmas special known as Deck the Halls with Wacky Walls, telling the story of some aliens who fall to Earth and need to find the real meaning of Christmas. It's a Christmas special as only the 80s could produce, and I needed a little bit of help untangling things, so I invited my friends Chris with a C and Kris with a K from the Christmas Time in the City podcast, and Mike from Snow in Southtown to discuss the merits and demerits of this very silly 80s Christmas cartoon special. I'll come back at the end to say goodbye, but for now, please enjoy this conversation about Deck the Halls with Wacky Walls. I don't want to make assumptions about anyone's ages or anything. Like my childhood was in the 80s, even some of the 70s. I'd say most of my childhood was during the 80s. And so this is definitely a special that would have been on my radar culturally, even though I didn't remember it at all. I don't remember it ever having aired. To the best of my knowledge, it aired only once. So did anyone else have any experience with this, or did you discover it for the first time this week?
I don't remember. I would have been 2 when this came out, so I don't remember it ever airing. Obviously, I used to get the little toys and like cereal boxes and stuff, but I don't remember the special at all. I would definitely remember it forever.
Yeah, I don't remember it either. But it's very iconic looking. Like, it looks like things I watched.
It feels like they put
the
so
80s.
much money. I mean, at 80s level, they put some any amount of money into that is too much money. I feel like.
So I remember these too, coming in boxes of cereal. It was Fruit Loops, if I'm not mistaken. And there was even one that glowed in the dark. And that was like the holy grail of these Wacky Wall Walkers. And I'm not even sure if the ones that came in cereal boxes were official on-brand Wacky Wall Walkers. Because as you can imagine, if a fad toy comes out, there's going to be knockoffs all over the place. But I do very distinctly remember they would come in like hot pink and glow-in-the-dark green. And they were usually like, they look like an octopus, I think. Because that's how they would walk down the walls. And then this is the 80s, so anything that was even remotely popular would have its own breakfast cereal, Saturday morning cartoon, a whole line of merchandise, maybe a special or two, probably even a song about it somewhere. I don't know if you guys remember Pac-Man Fever, but that was just the kind of thing that happened in the 80s. Anything with any social currency at all basically got a blitz on almost every means of media and marketing and production. There was just no way to escape things like that. And so I guess it was just inevitable that this fad toy would get its own Christmas special, which is just something like, I can't imagine anything like this happening today. I mean, there's no equivalent of something like this that could even possibly happen.
I think that in this meme culture, it wouldn't surprise me if like a meme got their own like Christmas special or something like that. I feel like fad toys have kind of gone out in the way that memes have kind of come in. Like, it's just like, I can see like
Grumpy Cat. He had a Christmas special. Grumpy Cat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
Grumpy Cat did. We're gonna have to do one on that too, because that is actually
Sorry, I said it.
surprisingly good. I thought the character of Grumpy Cat, played by Aubrey Plaza, was not bad.
Oh,
There you go.
And
That's
this
basically-
one,
So I
the same
remember.
idea, yeah.
I remember this as I was watching. I didn't know what I was getting into. I just clicked on the link, and then as I'm watching it, it was all coming back to me that this was something I never bought these things, but like you said, it was in the cereal boxes. I mean, I probably like fought my brother for them like treasure, but like it was nothing I would ever like buy. But I remembered it as I was watching the show. The nostalgia came back.
Mm-hmm.
and it's such a simple concept. And if I recall correctly, one of the occupational hazards, if you like, of using these wacky wall walkers is like you would get one or two walks before they would just pick up whatever dust was on your floor and on your walls, and they become unsticky. And I thought like you could wash them or rinse them off and they would retain their stickiness, but I don't really think that is true.
I think that's right. Well, that's what we tried.
One character, Stickum, he throughout the show, he ended up getting things on him. I thought it would have been really funny if at one point they just like rinsed him off in warm water and let him sit for a few minutes to dry.
That was my biggest issue here. Is like I remember, like you said, you throw it at the wall once, and like every piece of dirt in your house would end up attached to this thing.
Yeah.
And they're just strolling down the street like nothing, and I'm thinking all that dirt on the street.
Okay, so let's take it from the top. And this is, again, like it's the 80s. There's a fad toy. There's some writer's room where there's like cocaine somewhere. Like, okay, guys, we got to put something together, right? Like there is nothing about the toys, the Wacky Wall Walkers, that suggests that they're aliens. I mean, they're just sticky bug octopus looking things. But the premise we are given is that there is a planet somewhere that I guess it's 1,000 light years away or something like that, because it takes them thousands of years to reach Earth, where King Kling Kling and his chief scientist have discovered a star in their magic telescope, and they summon their crack team of the best investigators, one of whom is a baby somehow. A baby would qualify as being on the team of the best investigators that they're, and they go off on a mission to find out what this star is all about, right? And this takes place in the year 0, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
So
Conveniently.
King Kling Kling sends for his investigation squad, and they all come on in. And there is the leader of the group is named Wacky. And as I'm listening to these character voices, I'm trying to like place. Wacky has a voice that sounds very similar to other cartoon characters, maybe almost a little like Charlie in the Box from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. He has that kind of like lilting, sing-songy voice that you can't quite place, but once you hear it, you recognize it as, oh yeah, I've heard that kind of cartoon voice before.
A lot of the actors. There's like a Yogi Bear here. There's Eeyore. There's a lot of.
Yes.
I think that's what Chris was referring to when he said any money they spent, I assume, is for the voice talent, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because it wasn't for the quality of animation, and it definitely wasn't for the quality of story. Although, as you go through and map this story out, it is surprisingly well enough structured to hold together as a story. Like there were plenty of other things from that era where, you had a toy like G.I. Joe or something like that where, these things were just glorified commercials. And sadly, the version that we all watched on YouTube didn't have the commercial breaks. Or it had the breaks, but not the commercials. I would imagine there was a lot of advertising for the Wacky Wall Walkers.
Yeah. That makes sense. That's how you're making your money off of it.
Yeah, that was one thing I thought that was funny about like without skipping ahead too much, the story. It kind of led you to believe like, well, gifts aren't necessarily or toys aren't necessarily what Christmas is about, but if you want to buy some toys,
Yeah, exactly.
how about these sticky octopuses?
Which I guess would make sense because those things went for like $1 or $2, and this kid that we'll get into all of it really wanted this like $1,000 car.
Oh yeah, I thought the storyline. It was nice and like a tight storyline, like you were saying. I
think they blew it. I'll get at the end. I'll talk about it.
Short.
I think they blew the story.
Okay, so let's go through it. So the King Kling Kling sends off this crack team of exploration squad. And in the first act, and I tried to break this up into the commercial breaks, but there were a couple times in the video that we all watched where there was like a fade out and a fade in, and I couldn't tell if that counted as a commercial break. But the fade out and fade in nonetheless would count as just like a section of the story, right? So the way that I have it broken up may not be the actual acts of the story, but as these guys get into their spaceship, we get a musical number. And I think there are 2 musical numbers like this. And the purpose of this one is to introduce us to all of the characters. And so we have Wacky, who is the leader of this. And then there's Springette, who I presume that means she's the girl character, kind of like Smurfette, who doesn't really have any major personality traits other than just, she's like the female character. But, like Wacky's the leader, Crazy Legs has his personality, Big Blue definitely, right? Like the way that he interacts with the other characters suggests a lot about who he is. And I don't know, so there are, let's see, there's Wacky, there's Springette, there's Crazy Legs, Big Blue, Stickum. He's the one whose personality, or at least his qualities, sort of lend to a lot of the comic parts of the special. And then there's Bouncing Baby Boo, who, as we'll get into, like basically just shows up and disappears for most of the episode. But all of those personalities, you'd imagine that they would mingle and mesh in a certain way. Because, Big Blue, like you said, Chris, is very much like an Eeyore character. He doesn't want to be there. Everything he says is just kind of riffing off of what Wacky says. He's sort of like the negative Nelly of the group. And, Stickum is really just gets himself into sticky situations, literally and figuratively, throughout the story. But you'd imagine with all of those different kinds of personalities that there'd be like lots of opportunity for them to clash and interact in a way that would move the story forward. But I didn't really find that. I don't know if you guys had the same read on that.
Yeah, it didn't seem very character driven. It was basically, let's get to the storyline, let's wrap it up, and sell some toys.
Yeah. It almost felt like Fat Albert's Friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they're all just different types of people, like archetypes, but they all hang out and they all get together and somehow they're on this journey together.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm fascinated that you remember the traits of each one. Maybe you took notes, but I really, as you were saying it, I kind of could remember it. I just watched this today. But the main thing I noted was that we needed a song, like you said, to introduce the characters, because this would have come on the air in 1983, and we have no idea what this is. Like, could you imagine Charlie Brown having a musical number in the beginning that introduces us to Linus and, and everybody?
Well, because also, like, there may have been different shapes and colors for the Wacky Wall Walkers, but there certainly weren't, like, these 6 or 7 different models that all, because they all have to be shaped the same to work the same way. So these were, they were basically inventing new kinds of Wacky Wall Walkers for the purpose of this, and then giving them names and personality traits. And yeah, it just is interesting. You'd imagine there'd be one who was maybe a little, I don't know, overly curious or domineering or something like that, so that their personalities would play off one another and drive the plot forward. The only one that really does have some kind of character arc is Daryl, who we're going to get to. He's a child, not a Wacky Wall Walker. But so at the end of this first act, before the first commercial break, they land. Their spaceship makes it to Earth, and apparently they land on Christmas Eve. And this whole story takes place over one day, right? Like in the morning, they start trying to figure things out, and by the evening is when they've figured it all out. And their mission is to come to Earth and just figure out what Christmas is. And this is interesting because usually this is one of your classic plots of a Christmas story, especially one for children. Children's Christmas plots tend to be someone needs to learn the true meaning of Christmas, or Christmas itself is threatened and these characters have to save Christmas, from an evil witch or like something like that. And so in this case, it's a bunch of characters who need to learn the meaning of Christmas, but it's really Daryl who learns the meaning of Christmas. They're more on this fact-finding mission, but they have no context at all. And so when the second act begins, they're talking about how, oh my goodness, what a long trip that's been, but we made it, so here we are. So, like, I don't know, where do we even start? Like, let's just walk around and see if we can find any clues. And does anyone recall the first thing they come into contact with?
The house decorating?
Yeah, the guy decorating his house.
And so, I don't know, who wants to paint the picture? We see a guy who's decorating his house.
It's a
Yeah.
contest, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
Yeah, it's
very
a
nice.
contest.
And so,
Yeah, he has like a megaphone kind of thing, yelling at someone. Like it's not a friendly decorating type of thing. It seems like he's, you know, angry and trying to get this thing because he wants to win a prize at the end of it. So it was all about Christmas. It means prizes for decorations. That was like the first what they thought Christmas was.
and so this is the
And I'll say
interesting
this.
thing. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't love like the necessarily the characters or whatever, and we kind of laughed about the animation, but I think they sort of nailed like the Christmassy feel of the animation. I'll say when they had like Christmas lights up and decorations, I did get sort of a warm Christmas feeling. You know, I think they nailed like those scenes, those pictures.
Yeah, and I think that's what got me about this one. So I'm like a really easy sell on anything that's Christmas plus 80s plus cartoon, right? Like I would feel nostalgic for it even if I hadn't seen it. And it's usually things like that. It's a combination of the imagery and the music that just creates a Christmassy feeling where, that's usually enough for me. Last season, we did an episode like this where I had some other people on and we were discussing the Glow Friends Save Christmas, and very similar, right? Where different insofar as the Glow Friends, there were characters that already existed and they just put them into a dramatic situation, but they also just invented characters out of nothing and put them in a situation that just has nothing to do with your understanding of the toys. And I was the lone one in the group who was defending this. I'm like, this works. Like, it actually does. Like, as we go through this, you'll see, like, it holds together. It's not a diamond, but it's not terrible either. And I feel like with this one, it's easy to look at it and just kind of dunk on it. And this was very hastily thrown together. The animation quality is very patchy and all that. But the way that the story unfolds, I think actually kind of works because they're going through these different things where they're seeing different possible explanations of what Christmas is. And in a lot of ways, what that's doing is shining a light on the ways that different people here on Earth actually do celebrate and understand Christmas. So the first thing he comes along is this, stereotype of like a middle-aged man who wants to have the craziest Christmas display in the neighborhood so that he can have some sort of status. In this case, it's winning a prize. And they look at it and they're like, well, that's what Christmas is. But then it makes you think, well, like that literally is what Christmas is for some people. So they're not wrong. They're just looking at it only through one angle of the prism.
Well, and it's like the Jack town meeting scene in Nightmare Before Christmas where he's trying to use stockings and presents to explain it, and they don't get it. So it's that same kind of premise.
Exactly. So that is their first trial and error. And then I believe it is right after that they decide to go hide out because I think they didn't want to get discovered. And they hear two children talking about how they're going to go to the mall because they want to get some toys.
It's a Christmas sale. It's on sale.
Yes. Oh, so that's the other thing. So now they think Christmas is a contest, but then like, oh, Christmas is a sale. Let's go buy one, and then we can understand what Christmas is. And this is like it's cute, right? It's dramatic irony. We know more, the audience knows more than the characters do, so we're sort of like watching them bumble through this. But at the same time, everything they're doing makes perfect sense, right? Like, it's a very logical way to approach this.
Yeah, they only know the facts of what's given to them. So
exactly.
Christmas sale, I buy Christmas. Like it seems pretty. It makes sense logically to them that all of those things would be what Christmas is. But I want to bring up something before we go further because I like the idea that they are going in disguise in costumes, but they're really just putting on a Santa coat. And even before that, the guy decorating his house thought he was dressed up as an elf, which is crazy that this alien would be, oh yeah, that's an elf costume. And then they wear a Santa coat to go to the mall to make it, they're in disguise.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much like that character Roger on American Dad, where, he's like an alien, but if he puts on a wig, people will accept him as a human. Apparently, in cartoon logic, all you need is a mustache or a pair of glasses, and your identity is completely masked out.
I love it. I loved all their costumes. I thought it was funny.
So luckily, they found some costumes from the guy who was decorating his house. He just had some box of spare stuff. And they decide to follow these kids who are on their way to the mall. So they want to go and figure out what Christmas is. And this is where I think it's right around here that, we go to the mall before we go to a commercial break. And I think it's on the way there, or maybe it was on the way to the man's house, that Stickum gets himself stuck to something. And this will come up a couple of times, right? This is sort of like the one comedy piece that keeps coming up. And also ironic because they're all Wacky Wall Walkers, but apparently only Stickum gets stuck to stuff by accident.
And it should be equally sticky if they're trying to sell us the product.
Yeah.
And so all of his friends have to come to his aid and help him get unstuck. And ha ha ha, it happens over and over again. But so then they go to the mall, and this is where we pick up the B plot, which in a lot of ways is the main plot. It's Daryl who's the one who has a transformation. We see that he's a spoiled brat. His friend is getting to buy a bunch of toys. This is sort of the seed that we're going to plant now because it's going to come back later. Daryl's friend is going to buy a bunch of toys, and then Daryl is very jealous of this. And he wants his parents to buy him everything, even though apparently he already has everything. And his father said, well, what do you even want? And he doesn't know. He just knows he wants more than anybody else. So he looks around and sees a car that costs $1,000. He's like, that's what I want. And so I must have that, and I'm going to kick and scream if I can't have that. And then we go back to the A plot, which is the Wacky Wall Walkers. So they come to the mall, and they all just break up. Everyone goes off and does their own thing. And I think the first thing we see is that Crazy Legs tries to go get some food because he sees Christmas dinner. He thinks Christmas is something you can buy. So he goes up to a food counter. He's like, okay, just give me some Christmas. And the lady's like, well, what do you want? He's like, that. And she says, okay, well, here's some tuna casserole. And so he's like, oh, okay, I guess problem solved. We got myself some tuna casserole. So we figured Christmas out. And I think that brings us to the end of that first act. And so
he was disappointed too. He was, when he tasted Christmas, it wasn't the best.
Well, tuna casserole.
Kitchen. If someone asks you for a Christmas dinner, you're probably going to know at least some of the stuff they want.
You wouldn't suggest the tuna.
No, you would say tuna casserole is what Christmas is. Like, if someone asks for Christmas dinner, you're hooking them up a little bit more than that.
This is very 80s because there's a shopping mall and there are casseroles, which I remember my mom would make a lot of casseroles, and you could not force me to eat one no matter what. Does anyone even know what a tuna casserole is?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure it has some kind of cream of mushroom soup in it because they all do, right?
I used plenty of different types of tuna casserole growing up.
in the 80s.
In the 80s. Yep.
What is the definition of a casserole?
I don't know the definition. I guess it's...
I think coming from as a professional...
Oh, there you go. Come on, chef. What's
I would assume that the only definition of a casserole would be something that's cooked in a pan that doesn't have a crust, possibly.
Oh, interesting. So it would be like, but would a lasagna be a type of casserole?
Absolutely, for sure.
But so a casserole is more like one of those one pot kind of dinners because you can put rice, chicken, blah, blah, blah. You put it in a casserole, and then it all comes out together. Is that the basic idea?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Just the whole dinner in one go. Well, not even dinner, because there's always sides that are casseroles too. All right, now I'm hungry, you guys.
We're lucky. It was the 80s. We're lucky it wasn't some kind of Jello mold substance. So.
Oh, my mom was really big on those. Not that I think from the 60s is when you could get really gross with Jello molds. That's when it would have I would bet my life that there is some kind of tuna Jello mold recipe out there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But my mom would make ones that remember those cans of fruit cocktail in heavy syrup. She'd dump a whole one of those into a Jello mold, and I just could not. You couldn't take me away from it. I love those.
That doesn't sound bad at all.
That sounds great.
No, it's not bad actually.
It's a really good idea.
So anyway, Crazy Legs has his disappointing Christmas dinner, and then that's when we have one of these fade outs. I don't know if it was a commercial break, but then we start up again, and it's a separate little storyline. Now we're following Wacky, and he seems to think that Christmas is something that grows on trees because he sees all the Christmas trees in the mall. He sees the ornaments, right? So he sees Christmas ornaments. He's like, oh, those things grow on a tree, so that's what Christmas must be. And then we follow Crazy Legs, or maybe it's one of the other characters, who's sitting on Santa's lap. And we get this kind of Abbott and Costello routine. And this goes back to my earlier point about how we're kind of seeing Christmas through someone else's eyes, like normal people who celebrate it, trying to explain it to someone who doesn't get it. And in some ways, you sort of see the different ways that people can focus on what Christmas is. But then it also kind of surfaces the absurdities of Christmas somehow, where this Santa's saying, well, we put things in stockings. And, whichever character it was is like, well, why would you do that? Like, how do you walk? And then I forget what some of the other examples were, but he's just trying to explain what Christmas is, and it's just making no sense to this character at all.
It was a bunch, yeah. It went on for a little while. I was starting to kind of get tired of it, to be honest. But yeah, it was like the stocking. Yeah, and I was having nightmares. It was just going to keep going on and on, like a star, an ornament, like whatever. Yeah.
But it's interesting because at the end, when they all figure out what Christmas is, the way that they come to understand it is surprising. So we're going to get there. Like the way that they articulate what they think Christmas is doesn't really make a lot of sense.
I wrote it down. I love it so much.
It kind of gets me thinking, like, how would I describe what is Christmas to someone? Like if an alien came down and said, Brian, what is Christmas? Like, where would you even begin? What would be the first thing you told somebody?
Well, but the thing is, remember that they came because of the star, and they even keep asking about the star, right? And so you've got Charlie Brown on TV where they quote from the Bible, and so if this show is going to start talking about this star, and they even go, about 2,000 years ago, give or take, or whatever, right? So it's like I'm expecting for them to eventually tell the Christmas story, and then I guess because it started with the star, but then they just skirt around it and never really answer that question, right?
Yeah. I feel like it's almost very corporate of them, Right. Corporations aren't going to really talk about religion.
Well, that's fine, but don't start with the star. Like, make them
it doesn't make
a
sense.
Christmas tree or something. Yeah.
Right.
I know that the network people did not want the Charlie Brown special to include the Bible verses. I think
that was like 18 years earlier by that point, and so.
But they're the only major special that ever did that. And if I'm not mistaken, Coca-Cola was the original sponsor for that, and they may have had something to do with like not wanting the Bible verse passage in the special.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So anyway, at the end of this act, for no apparent reason, Baby Boo just wanders off. It's just like, okay, I'm going to go out the exit and just keep going. And this doesn't really lend to any drama later on. There's no like, oh my goodness, our spaceship can't leave until Baby Boo. It's just like Baby Boo just wanders off, and it's like, okay, well, I guess we'll figure out.
They were going to leave him. They were just like, he's gone. We'll just, guess we got to go.
It may be a Baby Yoda situation where he's actually very old.
But his speech is very underdeveloped. He talks in indecipherable baby talk.
Well, that's his English. Maybe you don't know it's his native language.
Yeah.
That's their language.
So then, now we're getting to about the midpoint, and I think this is another commercial break. And so the crew that's still in the picture reconvenes in the middle of the mall to share their theories about what Christmas is. And it's kind of like that old fable where 5 blind men are touching different parts of the elephant and then trying to describe the elephant. One's like, oh, it's like long, like a snake, because he was touching the trunk. So they're all coming back to share their theories about what it is. And, we know none of them have it correct, but they're still doing that anyway. And then all of a sudden, they notice that Baby Boo is missing. And this is really the only part where it becomes like a potential issue. They're like, oh, where is Baby Boo or Baby Boo? Like, oh, I don't know. We'll have to figure that out or something. But then we have this major plot twist where Wacky loses his disguise because Stickum got stuck again. So this is the one part where it really, the Stickum getting stuck becomes a problem. Suddenly, in the course of unsticking Stickum, Wacky loses his disguise, and so now he's got a problem on his hands, and he has to go hide undisguised. And so he says, okay, well, I'm going to think I'm a toy. Which, back to Chris, your earlier point, this guy decorating his house saw Wacky and thought, oh, you're an elf. But then undisguised in a toy store, people would just assume that he's merchandise that you can buy.
Yeah. I think it had to do with his very just like subtle stance on the counter as well.
That squat stance.
So then Daryl's parents see it and like, okay, we're not going to get you that $1,000 car, but we will buy you this thing. And so we don't actually see any of this. We see the other characters looking into the toy store, seeing Wacky getting boxed. So we don't see any of the, like, how did this happen? Like, how did his parents grab him off the shelf and bring him up to the register and pay, like, there was no, like, price check on this. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They weren't surprised that he felt like a living being. It's like... Imagine, like, watching, like, your fearless leader who sent you, like, across the universe get boxed up. Just, while you're watching through a window, like, uh-oh. First the baby, now he's gone.
Or even how they how would you get a sticky thing like that into a box? Apparently that was not an issue for this.
This also kind of felt like the Year Without a Santa Claus, where the elves come down and then they mistake the reindeer for a dog, right? And then they get sent to the pound and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It kind of had that feel to it, where it's like, come on, you know what you're looking at, right? It's not a dog.
So now this is you'd imagine like the crisis point in the story, but it's kind of not. We get there later on, but this is like a major plot. It takes the story in a whole different direction because now the A and B plots are joined, right? Like now the Wacky Wall Walkers and Daryl's stories have become one, and I think it is which character was it? The one who goes off to look for Baby Boo, Crazy Legs, says, "Okay, I'll go look for Baby Boo, and you guys go after Wacky." And so that's what happens next, right? Everyone gets rid of their costumes, and we follow the crew that's looking for Wacky. So they go to their house, they slide down the chimney, and this is just as Daryl is disobeying his parents' orders not to open anything because it's still Christmas Eve. But he opens the box and discovers Wacky inside, just as he also discovers his friends coming to look for him. And all of a sudden he realizes like, okay, something's not right here. We have to go hide in my hideout. And so they go into his little clubhouse in back. So did you guys ever remember those honeycomb cereal commercials?
Mm-hmm.
With like the honeycomb hideout?
Yes.
I don't remember that.
Oh, you don't really? There was one with Andre the Giant. That was like how every commercial went, where these kids would always go to the honeycomb hideout. That's what this reminded me of for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big deal. Like I remember in Monster Squad, in certain movies, but I don't remember the
Monster
honeycomb.
Squad. That's a great movie.
I don't know if I ever saw that one.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
The
hideout idea was prevalent. Yeah.
Did any of you guys ever had like forts or hideouts when you were growing up?
Oh, yeah. I used to go into the woods a lot, and we would build like random forts and stuff out of branches.
Yeah.
Why is it that like all kids that's a natural behavior for children is to want to build forts? And there's got to be like it's a universal trait, and I really can't imagine why that might be true.
That's
It's
true.
like
Blankets
the
and
cave
pillows,
people in us.
Or just like
just in
your
case
own
our parents
space.
sort of act up, we can split.
Yeah.
Plan B.
No, we had so many of those. When I grew up in a house that was up against some woods, and so we would go out and build forts, and somehow we always had building materials. Like our garage just usually had like plywood and 2x4s, so we actually built some pretty elaborate ones.
Wow.
Yeah. And we
That's
grew up in an
awesome.
area where there was a lot of snow, so we would build like igloos. I don't know if you guys had snow growing up, but we'd build these igloos and then take out the garden hose and spray them with water so that at night they would freeze into like basically solid ice, and they would just last for like, even after all the other snow melted, we'd still have an igloo.
Wow.
That's so great. I did not
grew
have
up in
snow.
New
I would
Orleans,
have loved
so no
that.
snow. Yeah.
Okay, so now we pick up the story again where most of the characters, except Crazy Legs and Baby Boo, are in Daryl's hideout. And Daryl is he's going to exploit this situation because he's giving his version of what Christmas is, right? So they say, okay, look, we're here because we're trying to figure out Christmas. And he's like, all right, I'll tell you what Christmas is. Christmas is a time where your parents just have to get you whatever you want if you're a kid. Like, that's it. There's nothing else you need to know about that. And I'll tell you what, I know what I want, and my parents aren't going to get it for me. So if you guys don't help me get what I want, I'm going to expose you. So he's basically threatening them to do his bidding so that he can get what he wants. And what was he said he's going to call the Air Force or something like that and have them deported? Or,
Yeah,
I don't know what
some
they
military.
mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then what Daryl's plan is that he needs to raise $1,000, which does not really fit in with like the spoiled brat mentality. Like if a kid doesn't get what he wants, or he's basically turns entrepreneurial to get enough money to buy what he wants, doesn't really quite fit with his character. But that's his plan.
Well, but he gets them to do the work, and so even you're right, because even the neighbors say, well, "I've never seen him work before, but he's not doing it."
Yeah. So he gets them. He goes around. I guess he started a business where he says, "I'll cut down a tree and decorate it for Christmas," but then he just sort of sits around and has the wall walkers do the work for him. And apparently, so then we go into a montage which is, any 80s movie or special is going to have a musical montage where they just show the characters doing their thing. And again, the story takes place over one day. So I guess we're to believe that within just a couple hours, they just do enough of this to raise $1,000. Yeah.
And we get a great song, Teamwork. Yeah. The lyrics that say, if you've got a tree to trim or a race you want to win, you can trim it, you can win it if everybody tries. Those are the lyrics.
I did not. Those are pretty inspiring words, actually.
If you got a tree to trim.
Well, because
I liked also how they only ever took the tops of the trees.
Yes.
They went to extra tall trees.
Only took the tops.
Right.
But it's a stark contrast to the first musical number, the one where they introduce everyone, because it is almost like just regular standard prose set to music. I don't know if you guys remember the words, but it's like, they're the wall walkers and they're coming to Earth and they're going to try to find out what Christmas is. Like they're telling the story in the most literal and least catchy way possible. And here they come and they're going in their spaceship. And then this one is a bit more of a message about teamwork and togetherness and all of that. So now it's evening, the crew is exhausted, and this, I feel like, is the crisis point, right? Like there's that moment about 2/3 or 3/4 of the way through any story where it just looks like all hope is lost. Because these guys got roped in under the threat of exposure to do this kid's work for him, and now it's like the end of the day, and it looks like they might not really find out what Christmas is after all. And so...
And he's rushing them to get to the store to get the car because now he's raised $1,000. So he really doesn't care about their problem anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right, exactly. And yeah, everyone's really tired. And then out of nowhere, Crazy Legs shows up. So he was out looking for Baby Boo. This is like a Deus Ex Machina kind of moment where at the critical moment, Crazy Legs comes out of nowhere. It says, guys, I figured it out. Like I was looking for Baby Boo, didn't find him, but I did find Christmas. So everybody come with me. And then I'm not really sure. I don't think we have any notion at all of like where this story is taking place other than just, generic town in America, just city. There's even a store, I think it was called City Pharmacy. I don't know if you guys remember that. but
apparently you didn't know where you
were. like a block down the road from City Pharmacy is an orphanage, which even that, there's another special that came out around this time called The Cabbage Patch Kids' First Christmas. And I think that takes place. There's an orphanage in that too. It just seems like something that shows up in a lot of Christmas stories and maybe a lot of 80s stories. But is an orphanage like an actual place? Like if you look at the Yellow Pages, would you find an orphanage? Is that an actual building you can go to? It's just this place where kids live, or?
I don't know.
They were just like threats by parents. Like, oh, we'll send you to the orphanage if you don't cooperate. Like, I don't know if I've ever seen an orphanage before.
Yeah, not advertised like that.
No.
Yeah, I just can't imagine where one might even find an orphanage. It sounds like something that was in a lot of 19th century stories. A lot of like Dickensian stories would feature orphanages because things like that would exist back then. As would like sanitariums and places like that. There's just, I feel like they don't exist anymore, but they still show up in stories like this.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, they go to the orphanage, and I think what they do is they're looking in the window and they're seeing, this is where they learn the true meaning of Christmas. And
Daryl's friend brings the presents.
Yes. So this is where all the plots kind of converge, right? At the climax point where Daryl has his resolution and the Wacky Wall Walkers learn the true meaning of Christmas, and they learn it all through watching this scene in the orphanage where someone's reading a story to these children. And then he sees Daryl's friend comes in to deliver all of these presents. And so earlier we saw Daryl's friend getting all these presents, and that made Daryl jealous. But come to find out, he was buying them all so that he could donate them to these kids who didn't have anything. And I think
the story she was reading was about the star, so they were finding out finally what the star was about.
Yes. And then also, wasn't there? So then suddenly the person who runs the orphanage, I don't know if there's a name for that job title, goes out to the mailbox and comes back with just like an envelope stuffed with cash. right? Like $1,000 to be exact. So it's just, in that moment,
she
Daryl
pulls the money out. It's a stack of bills, and she's like, $1,000.
She counted in the hall first. Like, ooh.
And so then they say, okay, well, why don't we use our wall walking powers, right? We're going to walk up the walls and we're going to see what's going on upstairs. And I think that's where we see the story about the star. So they're all looking in and they hear the story about the star. And then the crew finally gets it. And again, we get a very sanitized version of the star. Like, I think we start to hear the woman reading the story say a few lines of it, then it sort of cuts away, so we don't really hear any specifics. And then the crew finally gets it, and they say, oh, Christmas is a celebration of something that happened a long time ago.
It's very simple, yeah.
That is like...
That's the best, last line of a movie.
That is the most generic, because they're just saying, oh, it's a thing about a thing that people like to do. And that's
they traveled 1,000 years to figure that out.
Be any holiday at all.
Literally.
Love it.
And so then that takes us to the end of Act 6. Baby Boo is still missing, so that's going to be our little tag at the end, right? That one little piece we need to resolve. So, we get Daryl's story cleans up finally, where he has fully transformed. He gets it now. He wants to donate some of his toys to the orphanage because he has enough. All right, that one experience was, I guess, profound enough for him. Donates all of his money. And then the wall
his dad faints. His dad passes out at the mere thought of it.
Yeah, his eyes become like bull's eyes or whatever.
Right.
He can't believe what he's seeing. And then the Wall Walkers are prepared to be like, all right, I mean, I guess we never found Baby Boo, but we got to get back to our planet. So, I don't know. So we'll see how that goes.
Leave him behind.
But then they go back to the rocket, and it turns out that Baby Boo has been there all along, decorating for Christmas. And so it all ties up. It ties up pretty nicely, because now not only have they learned what Christmas is, but they are apparently about to celebrate their first one together.
And the last lines of the song literally say, they had to find out what that star was about, and now they know what Christmas is.
Well, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that, and maybe it inspired you to check out that special. Look at the show notes for this episode for a YouTube link. And also check out the show notes for links to the Christmas Time in the City podcast and Snow in Southtown. Thanks again to Chris with a C, Chris with a K, and Mike for joining me on today's episode. Tomorrow I'll be back with something completely different, and until then, let me remind you as always that Christmas Past is produced in sunny San Mateo, California by yours truly, Brian Earl. You can always drop me a line at christmaspastpodcast@gmail.com or find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you haven't yet joined the private Christmas Past Facebook group, what are you waiting for? Maybe today's the day you'll take the plunge and join the Christmas Past family. And if you're enjoying these daily episodes and the Christmas cheer they bring you during these uncertain times, I have a feeling you have friends or family in your life who could also use a little Christmas cheer, so why not help more people discover this show? It's as simple as telling a friend about it or leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. Those are both quick and painless ways to show support, and they really do make a big difference. If you leave a review on Apple Podcasts, I'll even send you an official Christmas Past sticker, and a handwritten Christmas card is my way of saying thanks, and you can get in touch with me for details about that. Until we meet again tomorrow, stay safe and healthy, look out for one another, and may your days be merry and bright.